Hi, I'm Danielle with Stitch and Designs. Welcome to my channel. We're going to be doing the Sewing Marathon Tuesday Tote, and this is by Knotted Threads. So this is what the front of the pattern looks like. There's also, so I'm going to be doing for mine, I'm going to be doing just the basic tote, how it came in the original pattern. I'm going to be doing option A. This is what option B looks like. So it's got more, if you're doing vinyl and cotton woven, the vinyl is more on the sides. And then where option A, the vinyl is on the bottom. But there's also the add-on pack you get where it adds, I believe there's a recessed zipper in there. Don't hold me to it. I can't remember what's in it. Then there's, I know it's got the center pocket for like a center zipper on the inside of either one of the bags. There's a few different options, and there's like the basic bags in general. There's so many options to do with them. If you wanted to add a magnetic closure, you can easily add a magnetic snap to that. You can add a zipper pocket to the inside. You can add a slip pocket to the inside. This tote is just great. You can use it for a book bag, just a quick little throw everything in. If you're going to like a kid's sports game, just throw everything in there. A snack bag for those events, or like a snack bag for the car. If you're going on like a little quick day trip to the beach, or I don't know, lots of grocery bags. There's so many different ways that you can use these totes. Or if you wanted to use them as a big purse, you totally could do that too. All right, for mine, sorry if the camera moved, my dog decided to lay underneath it. So for my inside lining, I am using waterproof canvas. I have my webbing. The pattern says to cut them to 24. I cut mine to 27. I'm a little on the taller side, so I want to kind of have it just like a little bit more arm room for myself personally. So this is my vinyl for the bottom. I do not have anything interfaced on this one. And I'm really excited for this one because I do enjoy the Sarah J. Maas series books, and her third Crescent City book comes out on the 30th. So I'm using cotton woven from Chic Geek. This is her kind of like more of her ACOTAR, or so a Court of Thorns and Roses series with the fairies. But what the cool thing about the third book in Crescent City, ACOTAR and Crescent City kind of combine together, like the characters merge into the book. So I'm doing this in honor of the third Crescent City book. I'm very excited for it. So this will be the book bag that I take into the store to be able to go get my book. And then on the back of this, I have it interfaced with Tay Tay fuse. So just one layer of Tay Tay fuse, and like I'm pretty happy with that structure. Like it's definitely thicker than SF101. So that's what I have. And then I also have my little personal label on there. I don't have any cute little woven labels to add to the inside of this bag, but if you had one of those, you could totally add that. I'm going to kind of segue here real quick. If you wanted to do embroidery for these bags, this bag is fantastic. One, for panels. If you have a lot of panels, you could use a cotton lycra panel or any of the other woven based panels. So you could use it for the top. You could use it for option B, where it's like in the middle if you have a little bit smaller one, but then you have the and then you can do like color blocking. So you have color on the top and the bottom, and then just the panel in the middle. So many different ways to use panels for this. If you want to do embroidery, you could take the lining and do the lining size as your exterior as well. You don't have to do the top and the bottom or the sides. You don't have to do those options. You could have it just be one whole thing. You could do a really big embroidery design on the exterior really easily if you did the one whole piece. If you did option A like I'm doing, we have this whole top piece for a really big embroidery design like that. This is a lot of room to play for a big embroidery design, which is really cool. If you're doing option B, you have a smaller window like in the middle. Like it's nice and tall. So if you had something that was long but narrow, that would work perfectly in there. Or just like a little simple like 5x7 size hoop that could go right in the middle of it. That would be an excellent words. That would be a really optimal spot for like something like that. And then if you're going to be doing on the bottom, so you have to note that the top part is going to get rolled into your seam allowance there. And then this is all going to be on the bottom of the bag, so you don't want it to go down there. And then you want to about probably a half inch from these edges here. That's kind of like a no-go zone, just because it's going to kind of be more tucked down to the bottom, if not a little bit more than a half inch. So you have this little strip right here. right in the middle of this, that would be your area if you were going to embroider on the bottom of this one. So you kind of go in there. And then if you did do option B with the sides, it doesn't give you a lot of like working room, because then you have the side seams, so you have just like a little area. So that one may not be the best. The middle section would be a great spot, but the sides would be a little bit harder. But that's if you wanted to do embroidery. So lots of options and avenues to go down to use this bag for awesome embroidery or panels. All right, well, let's get started. All right, we're gonna grab one of our fronts. So set the other front aside and the other bottom part aside. We're going to lay these right sides together. So this is the wrong side, this is the right side, and then this is the right side of my fabric, and then the wrong side. We're gonna lay those right sides together. So I'm going to make sure that it's like, so the bottom, so this is the bottom, and then this is the top, making sure to line up the long sides together. So clip those. And then we're going to sew this down at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure the back stitch. Okay, and then we're going to fold this bottom part. We're going to fold it down. And then we're going to kind of press our seams here. So, and I have my seam pressing towards the top, and then we're going to top stitch this at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then if you want to, you could add, if you wanted to add if you have a business label, adding it to the front of the bag, or if you want to put it onto the inside of the bag, that's a completely personal preference. I think I'm actually going to add it to the front of the bag. So I'm kind of going to give it a little, to find my center a little bit higher up. Kind of give it a little pinch. I'm not over pinching, so I give it a crease. Just enough to where I can find it. Okay, so I got that there. I know I'm kind of out of frame a little bit. Okay, so I got my label there. All right, so I'm going to sew my label on, and I'll be right back. All right, got my label on there. All right, so we can set that piece aside, and we're going to grab our second one, and we're going to do the exact same thing with this one. Okay, we're gonna find our top centers, because this is gonna help us to add our webbing. So making sure, so when we're finding our centers, so we're taking our two corners, we're lining up our corners, holding those there, we're sliding our fingers across, making sure there's no little wrinkles, and then we're holding here, and we're just gonna make a small snip. So that's how we find our centers. We're going to do that to our second piece. And if you hear snoring, yes, that is my corgi. One of 11 corgis. If I turn around right now, I have 5 corgis right behind me. Ooh, one of the puppies just came in. I think we need a puppy break. So this is Kaylee. She's one of our newest little babies, and she's got something in her fuzz. Oh yes, hello. You want to say hi? Yeah. Oh yes, say hi. Yeah, you're just a cutie. She's a blue merle. She'll be 4 months old at the end of this month. My sweetheart. Yeah, good girl. Yeah. You getting your cuddles? You gonna go cuddle with everybody else? Yeah? Okay. Your belly is like, what is this? That's the one bad part about them being our newest three are fluffies. So they have longer hair and they catch everything because they're so short on their bellies. All the little twigs and pine needles. Yeah. Yeah. You're just being a cute little goober. Yeah. Yeah, you're a good girl. All right. Go do your cuddles. All right, we're gonna grab our webbing. Make sure to lay your pieces flat. Grab a ruler, and we're going to measure over 3 7/8 or 3.75, or technically it would be 3 3/4 inches over. So we're gonna make a mark from center 3 3/4 or 3.75. Gonna make sure to mark both sides of center, and that's where our webbing is going to attach. So then grab one of your pieces of webbing, and then the webbing is going where your mark was, is going to go to the inside of, oh my gosh, now I can't even find it. Oh, there it is. So the mark is right here and my webbing is here. So we want to make sure that your webbing is on the outside of your mark, not to the inside. So if my mark's here, that's to the inside. I want my webbing on the outside of that mark. And we want to have a 1/2 inch hangover. Sorry for the camera moving. Miss Kaylee decided to go bonk it. And then we're going to, I'm using my fingers to make sure there's no loops. And then we're going to go lay this down on the other side. Where's my mark? There it is. Marking with silver was probably not the best choice with a gray background. Okay, and again, making sure that your webbing is to the outside of your mark, and then make sure there's no twists in your handles. So if this side is facing up, you want to make sure that that is facing up on the other side. And I know it's hard to tell because it's the same color, but there's no twist. And so then we're going to stitch this down at 1/8 of an inch. And you want to make sure to go back over this a couple times as well. Okay, once you have this side done, we're going to do the exact same thing to our other side. Now that your other side is finished with the straps, we're going to lay our sides, right sides together for our exteriors. We're going to line up our bottom pieces. Clip those all together. And we're going to sew this together at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now that we've sewn our bottom, we're going to press open that seam. So I'm just finger pressing it because it's vinyl, so I can't really iron it. So I'm just giving it a finger press real quick. And that's going to help with our next step. And then if you flip it over, and then try to finger press it down again. Now that we've got it finger pressed, we're going to top stitch on each side of our center. So this being our center right here. And that's going to help hold our seams down one to each side. When you get to the far end, all we're going to do is we're going to pivot, do a couple stitches, and then we're going to pivot again, and then double checking that our seam is still laying flat, which mine kind of popped up. And then if you're a little off or a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch over from center, that's okay, because this is all going to get hidden in the seam allowance. So even if you're a little bit over, it's okay. And then we're going to sew back up the other side. Right, so this is what your the bottom of the bag should look like. So I got my center right in there, and then I got my top stitching to either side of that. Right. Now that we have the bottom done, we're going to now sew up our sides. And so if you're doing option A, you really want to make sure that you're lining up your seams right here first. Because if those are off, you're definitely going to be able to tell that those are off. So make sure to clip those together first. And if your bottom or right here, so mine is slightly off, I'd rather have that slightly off than that seam slightly off. So make sure to clip in both directions. And again, on the other side, we're going to make sure that those seams are lined up because we want it looking pretty. And then once you have it all clipped together, we're going to sew down each side at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then depending on the material that you have, you might want to sew a second line of stitching. That was just going to help reinforce like your seams, especially on your vinyl. So I'm going to sew a second row of stitching just above where the vinyl part starts on the bottom. So I'm going to go start above it and then sew down towards the bottom. And once you finish this one side, we're going to flip it around and we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay, now that our sides are sewn up, we're going to grab these bottom corners and we're going to line up the center here, which is the bottom, and then the center from the side. We're going to make sure that those guys get all lined up. And then for the side seam, we can finger press those to the sides. I know in the instructions, she talks about pressing the seam open with an iron. If you wanted to press that seam open, you totally can. I'm a little on the lazy side and tend to not like to get up to go to the iron. And plus, I don't have the little pressing cloth. Well, I could use a towel, but again, I don't want to get up. I need to bring an iron like to where my actual sewing machine is. Because it gets hard to get up when I have all my dogs laying around my sewing chair, so I don't want to run over their tails. So I'm just clipping the other side as well. And we're good there. And we're going to sew that at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And if you have vinyl on the bottom of your bag like I do, this would be a really good place to be able to reinforce this bottom corner stitching and do a second row. And then you're going to trim off your excess and you're going to trim it down to a 1/4 inch. And we're going to flip this over and we're going to do the exact same thing to this side. All right, so that finishes our exterior of our bag. So far, so good. All right, we can set that to the side. And now we're gonna grab our lining pieces. On the back of our lining pieces, we're going to make a couple marks. So we're going to mark 2 inches and 1 inch on the back of our lining. This will come in handy when we're sewing our seams together. Okay, once you have your marks done, we're going to then lay these right sides together and we're going to clip down our sides. If you have a cute little woven label, per the instructions, you want to add it to one of the sides, and you can add it about 3 inches down is where you'll add your cute little label, unless you wanted to add it to the exterior. And then we're also going to clip our bottoms together, and then we're going to come back and make our marks on our where we're going to turn. So make sure to clip all the 3 sides. We're not clipping the main top middle. And then we want to make a 5 to 6 inch gap on the bottom. So we want to put some marks. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered. So I'm just going to do 5.5. All right, so now we got our marks. So we're going to be, the marks are going to help us indicate when we need to start drifting into changing our seam allowance length. So we're going to start out at 3/8. And if you hear grumbling, that would be our puppies. They came back inside and they're wrestling now. So we're going to 3/8, we're going to sew a 3/8 inch to our first 1 inch line. And then from our first line to our second line, we're going to increase that to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then once we hit that 2 inch mark, it's going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance the rest of the way. All right, let's see if I can do what Shannon does, because that would be really cool. So what in the instructions, she like brings the bottom piece over. So let's see if we can actually do this, because I haven't always been the most successful at trying this, but I want to try. All right, so we're here. So my needle is still down. And then, okay, I'm at the 1/2 inch. So, all right, I made the jump. I'm not quite at a 1/2 inch, but there we go. And then I'm going to stop when I get to where my opening needs to be for the bottom, and I backstitched a little bit there. And then I'm going to pull these guys, snip there, slide on down. If it was a smaller gap, then I would just make the jump, but I'm just going to cut the threads. And then we're going to take a couple, and then, so again, I'm still at a 1/2 inch, so I sewed forward and then I backstitched, and now I'm going to go forward for the rest of the way at the 1/2 inch. Sorry for the camera moving. That's the one bad part about sewing with dogs. And again, I'm going to bring that over, make that jump. There we go. Woohoo! I made it. And then we're going to sew up at a 1/2 inch seam allowance until we get to that first mark we made. Okay, so we're coming up to my first mark. All right, so I'm at the first mark, and so we're at a 1/2 inch. So between the first mark, which would be the 2 inch, and we're going to transition from 1/2 inch down to 3/8 inch to the second mark. Okay, now that we're at that first mark, or the 1 inch mark, we're going to continue to sew at a 3/8 inch till we get to the end. Okay, now that the sides are sewn down, oh, gotta trim those guys. All right, so because we made that jump, that part's already sewn together, so this will make this part fairly easy. So we're gonna box our bottom corners. I'm gonna make sure you can either butterfly, so you can, butterfly being that you open your seams. Come on. So we can open our seams, and so we butterfly them open, and we make sure to line up our centers that way. So we can either do it that way, or we can nest our seams. So I have my excess going one way on one side, and the excess on the other side going the other way. So that one, it's a personal preference. Sometimes I kind of go with what my fabric wants to do, because sometimes it's easier to butterfly it open, and then sometimes it's easier to nest them. So it just kind of depends on what my fabric wants to do. And then if you do nest them, so this is going downward on that side. So I want to try to keep the same direction when I go to the other side. So now if I look at them, they're both going the same way. So they're not flip-flopped. So that one's pointed down. This side's pointed down. So then it's smooth. If I went the other direction, see how it gets that twist in there? So I want to try to avoid that twist. And if you do the butterfly, then you don't have to worry about a twist being there. And we're going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to trim our corner down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to do the same thing to our other side. All right, our bottoms are boxed. We are ready to go to add this to the inside. So we're going to turn our lining right side out. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just mainly want to get especially the top, we want to make sure that the top is nice and turned out. The bottom's still kind of a mess, but that's okay. All right, we're going to then grab our exterior and we're going to put the lining right inside. Zoom out. There we go. So what we want to do is the seam of our lining here, we want to line up with the seam of our exterior. And so again, you can either butterfly your seams or you can nest them. Personal preference on what you guys would like to do. Oh, because the bottom on this side, the exterior is butterflied, so no, I'm just gonna nest. It's easier. I'm just gonna nest them. A little bit easier. And do the same thing to the other side. And if you did mark your centers of your exterior, like I did my exterior, but if I marked my top center of my lining, made that little notch, then I would want to make sure that those are lined up as well. But I did not mark my center of my lining, so I'm just adding my clips. Making sure our webbing is sticking out. We don't want those tucked down in. All right, we're going to sew around all the way around the top at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now that the top is sewn around, we're not going to be trimming off any of the seam allowance from the top. We're going to reach inside and we're going to find our opening from the lining, and we're going to then grab our exterior and we're going to pull it through. And depending on your materials that you have, if you did all vinyl for this, then maybe having a 6-inch or even 7-inch opening on the bottom would be better. If you did all cotton woven, or anyway, just depending on your material, like it definitely is easier with a little bit bigger of a hole. Most of it turned out. That looks good. So I'm reaching my hand back inside and I'm going to then push out the bottom. Make sure to poke out those corners. Good. Okay, and then this part is personal preference, whether you want to sew the hole closed first or sew it closed after. I think I'm just going to sew it closed now. So I'm making sure to then I'm pinching and making sure that my lining is all tucked down to the inside. I'm going to clip that. And then I'm going to sew across this at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to then work our seams all the way around. So maybe having some of that done afterwards might have been a little bit easier. Make this part easier, I mean. But I'll make it work. So we're rolling the seams. I'm making sure that lining up my exterior and my lining at the top. I'm going to shove the lining to the inside of the bag. That might help get it all lined up. So I'm poking my corners of my lining outward into the corners of the bag. So yeah, just take your time working and rolling your seams. You want to make sure that you get the excess out and you're lining them up. All right, so I am clipped all the way around, and so I'm going to top stitch this at an 1/8 inch. If you wanted to, you could do an 1/8 inch, you could do a 1/4 inch, you could do both. So I'm just gonna do, I normally do a 1/4 inch, so I'm gonna do a 1/4 inch. So, and I like to start inside like a seam like this, so that way when I tie it off and pull it through, it's not as obvious. So I'm going to start in that crease there. Making sure to drop my needle right in that seam. There we go. There we go. And then just take your time going around, making sure that your straps are not getting underneath of your sewing foot. So make sure to know where your straps are, because it'd be really easy to sew over them. And then I'm getting back to where I started. I want to make sure that I'm ending, yep, right in the seam. Perfect. And pull some tails. And then I want to go to the inside of my bag, and so I want to work on bringing them to the inside. So the ones that are on the outside, bring them in. Okay, if I can see, black thread with black waterproof canvas is a little bit tough. Okay, come on. There we go. One set. There we go. That was a lot easier. So you get a big eye needle, so like this. You're going to then add your thread ends through. So you're going to add all 4 threads, and this works. What I'm doing right here is if you're doing this on an industrial machine where you keep your tails out of the way, if you're doing this on a domestic machine, doing like some back stitching and over the top, it's not going to be as noticeable because your thread's not as thick as this. But if you do pull your tails like I was doing on your domestic, then you could definitely do it like this as well. And then I'm going to go back into the fabric at the same line as the stitching was. And then I don't want to go all the way through, but I want to come up in between the exterior and the lining so you can see, oops, let me get into frame. So you can see the exterior, my interior, and my needle's right in between. So I'm going to pull that up and through. See, now it's nice because now I don't have any knotted off right in here, so you're not going to see it. And then split those threads, and then we're going to tie this into some knots and make sure to pull tight, and then it's going to suck it down in between the exterior and the interior. So I like to do 3 knots. Making sure to pull tight, and then we're going to trim. And then grab your lighter, and then just kind of like go over the top of it. Because the type of thread for the industrials, it will melt. Not all, some threads on the domestics will melt, some of them won't. It just depends on the thread type that you have. Well, and that's it. She is done. All right, she is all done. Oh, I love this book bag. I am excited for the 3rd Crescent City to come out, and I can take this to the bookstore and be like, yeah, check out my ACOTAR Sarah J. Maas themed book bag. And it's like, now give me all the books. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. So another thing that would be, this would make a great bag for is like if you go to farmers markets and stuff like that, so like grocery bags, of course, but teacher gifts, like this would be a great teacher bag. So this would be awesome. You could either, like if you have a Cricut or embroidery machine, you could embroider the teacher's name on it and stuff like that, or just their last name. You can add some pencils to it. Like you can get super creative for this. This can also be a great like gift bag for like birthday gifts, or if you do Christmas, so any of the holiday gifts that you would normally do wrapping paper, you could do little bags like this instead, so then they're reusable. There's so many uses for this bag, for this type of bag. It is very versatile, which is really awesome about it. And again, there are a lot of different ways that you can make this bag. You can add a magnetic snap here, and then of course there's all the add-ons that you could do. You could do that are, the add-ons are part of like part of the patterns. It's an additional pattern purchase for this. There's a bunch of different things that you can do for this, but if you don't have that, you could still add a zipper pocket, a slip pocket. You could add all sorts of stuff to this thing to make it very unique to you and your needs. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial for the Tuesday tote. And the Tuesday tote again is by Knotted Threads. And I hope you guys enjoy all the other tutorials for this sewing marathon that we have going on today. Again, thanks for watching. Bye.